Hello everybody, welcome to episode number 5 of the Real Talk Real Estate Show. Boy, we have a good one for you today. We are breaking down our Virginia market. Happy holidays, it's the end of the year, and as you know, we're going across the DC, Maryland, and Virginia region. Last week we checked out DC, we broke down each marketplace. Well, today we are heading to Northern Virginia, where we're going to look at the area as a whole. Next, we're going to break down the areas that won, the areas that lost, who made money, who stayed the same, and why that all happened. So check us out. So let's dive right in. I want to start by saying in the area, median home prices in Northern Virginia stayed largely unchanged in 2016. They are still around $423,000. That's a nominal change from last year. So we didn't see a lot of activity there. However, we're going to break down where we saw the highest median home prices and then our lowest, starting with McLean, Virginia, 22101, where the median home price will cost you just a lousy $950,000. Second, Great Falls, Virginia, 22066, where we see a $987,000 median home price. Rounding us out is North Arlington, 22207, where we saw over $1 million on average for median home prices. Those are our 3 highest median home prices by area. By contrast, we have our lowest in 22134, Quantico, Virginia. You're coming in at $214,000. However, you're up from last year. That still remains our area's least expensive part. We also have 22041, the Falls Church, Bailey's Crossroads area. And Falls Church, think about it, is 5 zip codes, but in that part, you're sticking around $245,000 on average. And then Dumfries, Virginia, 22026, that area, you're coming in at $280,000 on average. So that's where our affordable housing is, and by contrast, that's where things are most expensive. So I wanted to break down winners by area. We'll start with the counties, because as you know, Northern Virginia is comprised of multiple counties. Starting in Fairfax, we had a big winner there. Your median home price is up 7.2%. Congratulations, you went from $450,000 to $482,000 on average. Next, we had Fauquier County, where we saw a greater increase at 9%, just over 9%, $349,000 to $380,000 on average. And then we take a look at a county like Arlington, where the cost per foot and median home price did not change a ton, but I want to get into that in a little bit. So if I'm looking at our winners, so we have the counties, but where in these counties are people really making the most gains? And it's an interesting thing. I'll start by saying we saw the most gains in Marshall, Virginia, Round Hill, Warrenton, Lorton, Virginia, Middleburg. We saw in all of those areas double-digit increases in the median home price. You picked up on something there, didn't you? Where are all of these areas that are seeing double-digit, I'm talking 25, 35% increases in the median home price? Well, it's pretty simple. As housing gets more and more expensive inside the Beltway and points around, people are being pushed out looking for that affordable housing. And so those areas that traditionally didn't see much change are now exploding in value, because that's where you need to go if you want the land, if you want something more affordable. So that's a trend that I've really picked up on. It's very evident in Northern Virginia. And our biggest winners by cost per foot, because remember, if you go back to last week, there's median home price, which tells a story, but then there's this other side, which what does 1 square foot of real estate cost you in these areas? And when we look at that, it kind of sometimes will tell us a different story. So our biggest winners cost per foot, which I would pay special attention to these. We have West Arlington, 22213. We went from $394 a foot, exploded already all the way to $532 a foot. That is a 35% increase in West Arlington. That is awesome. We'll go back to that. Ballston, Virginia. Love Ballston, 22203. You won this year. We went from $351 to $468 a foot. That is a 33% increase. Chantilly, Virginia, we're up 21%. Fairfax, Virginia, we're up 10%. Vienna, you're at 9% with a median home price increase of 23%, all the way to $712,000. Again, Vienna, Virginia, $712,000 on average. And we're going to round out our biggest winners with cost per foot in Alexandria, Virginia, where this year we saw a 9% increase in the cost per foot. It's interesting, and this is where I want to segue into a trend that all of this data, albeit maybe sounds confusing, but I can summarize by saying this. Falls Church City, traditionally a very expensive area, great schools, very desirable close in, near Metro, all that stuff. Well, in Falls Church City, Virginia, we saw a median home price come down 25% in 2016, which is shocking considering the fact that I don't think things are 25% less expensive this year than they were last year. But by contrast, the cost per square foot, we saw a 12% increase in the same place where we saw a 25% decrease in the median home price. Today, it went from $387 a foot last year to this year, $434 a foot. What is that telling us? Why is this important? Why are median home prices in certain areas going way down and the cost per foot going up? Bottom line, bigger, larger spaces close into town are not appreciating at the same rate that smaller spaces are appreciating. You have a 500 square foot place in Falls Church City, the cost per foot will make that property more valuable than a 5,000 square foot property that the median home price is coming down on. So it tells me that the higher end brackets are not selling at the rate that the lower end stuff is. And ultimately, we're just seeing something like this happening where the cost per foot's going up because we're building smaller spaces and that bigger stuff is not reaping the same benefit. So that's a trend that's super apparent in Northern Virginia. And I think this will actually transition well into then where do we see losers? And again, I love these areas, and so it kind of breaks my heart sometimes to talk about the losers, but we have to because it kind of speaks to what's going on in the market. Number one, we saw McLean, Virginia. I'm sorry, you're comprised of 3 different zip codes. In all 3, and I checked all 3, I dug through as much data as I could, the cost per square foot actually went down roughly 2% on average. And the median home prices in all 3 are down or maybe stayed the same. So you're talking about your property certainly didn't appreciate in those 3 zip codes this year. If you're just looking at the data, there are exceptions, of course, but overall that market in all 3 zip codes didn't really move and the cost per foot didn't change. If anything went down, the same with the median home price. So that is an area where we're seeing this trend. A lot of larger, older spaces, they're not really moving, things aren't going up, and that's currently going through a little bit of a shift in the marketplace. Falls Church, Virginia, in all 5, but not including Falls Church City, we saw a decrease in the cost per foot from $358 a foot to $328 a foot, and the median home prices across all 5 zip codes really flatlined as well. So again, no appreciation on the average cost, and the average cost per square foot, unfortunately, went down a good $20, $25. So again, we're going to put those 2 on our biggest losers. There were other areas in Virginia, and again, I don't have enough time to break down each little neighborhood, but we just saw a lot of flat activity, but in those winners, in those winning areas, we saw the appreciation. In the losers, we saw the depreciation, and then everything in between just kind of felt like maybe they went up 2 or 3%, maybe went down a little bit, but there wasn't a tremendous amount of activity in many of the other markets in Northern Virginia. So what does that tell me? Bottom line, we see trends. Larger spaces, suburban areas, they're not really moving as quickly as they have historically. The younger move-up buyers are not concerned with those larger spaces like maybe once was popular in the 90s and early 2000s. Smaller, more energy efficient, closer in, that's what people are looking for. Invest in that, you will win in Northern Virginia. Number 2, we're seeing affordable housing being pushed to the suburbs, and I'm talking beyond the traditional boundaries of suburbs. Middleburg, these areas, Aldie, Virginia, points way out. That's where people are looking for opportunities to score a $400,000 4-bedroom property, which in Arlington, forget about it. You can't even get a 1-bedroom most of the time for that kind of money. So that trend is very much happening, which is creating an increase in these suburban markets. And lastly, we're just seeing that there's a continual shift in what buyers are finding valuable in these marketplaces. And in Northern Virginia, I'd pay close attention in 2017, and this is where I'll end it with my predictions, that 2017 will be a good year for Virginia. And if you're willing to move your search out to the outskirts of areas that you haven't normally considered, I think you stand to gain an opportunity this year by finding properties that are more affordable, that have the best potential of becoming more valuable over time. And in the tried and true areas, you may just want to stick to a smaller space. So I think that's going to end it here for how we're breaking down Northern Virginia. We want your questions. If you have any questions about this information specifically, please send them in. You can use the email info@ thefoxgroupdc.com, where again, we're getting your questions. We're glad to answer them and feature on this show. You can also use the hashtag AskJohnFox. You can find links to this episode and all of our other market episodes, which includes Washington, D.C. last week and Maryland the next week, on our website, www.thefoxgroupdc.com. And we're going to stay on this stuff. I told you, 2017 is going to be an exciting year for real estate, and this is just a recap of 2016. So I hope you check us out. Thanks.